Hi everyone, Laura Smith here. Today's topic is around AAC and childhood apraxia of speech. First of all, what is AAC? So AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication, frequently shortened to AAC. And it can be high-tech or low-tech, but most people know it as talkers or talk boxes or speech-generating devices. And essentially, these might be a program on an iPad or some sort of other digital device that is dynamic, and the child can push the button and the device speaks the word that the child pushed. So AAC has some great research behind it. It does so many things, and it's very important because AAC provides an opportunity that, it provides an opportunity for many things in a child who's still pre-verbal and unable to communicate. AAC provides one of the biggest things that it can provide right away is it repairs communication breakdown and reduces frustration in a child who's struggling to speak. So that right there is a huge benefit to it. But other things that AAC can teach while the child still cannot speak is teaching the child to learn things like topic initiation, initiating a topic, commenting on things. It can expand message length, message complexity, teaches vocabulary, and all of these things are great because it facilitates language development. And so, when you're looking at speech and language, speech really is just referring to the sound production, while the language piece refers to, a variety of things, including vocabulary, grammar, syntax, comprehension, and social language. So all of those things, a child is potentially missing out on when they can't speak. And so AAC provides a way to develop all of those other skills while, the child is still pre-verbal or working on their verbal speech production skills, particularly in childhood apraxia of speech. So I do get a lot of questions from parents that asks, are we giving up on speech by introducing a talker? Or is this going to make it so that my child doesn't feel they have to speak and they'll just rely on the device? And research is so clear. There's so much research out there that shows that's never the case. Humans like to communicate using the path of least resistance. And if you are able to talk, you're going to use your verbal speech. So anyway, that's kind of my caveat there. So definitely, I'm a huge AAC proponent. I don't specialize in it, and I actually don't teach it. So then, Laura, what do? You just said AAC is important. So what I do, and you have to remember, I'm in the ideal circumstance. So school SLPs, I'll get to in a minute, but at least for my practice, I have a private practice specializing in apraxia, and those are what all of my goals are related to, are they're related to speech, acquiring speech. So if I have a child who I feel really needs AAC, I'm not the one that does it. What I do is I refer them to colleagues that I have in my area who specialize in AAC, and I see them in tandem. So I support AAC goals from my colleagues. However, the focus in my clinic then is on verbal speech, and conversely, the focus with the AAC experts that I refer these children to is on AAC and language and all of those other nice goals that you can target surrounding language while a child is pre-verbal. So that's ideal circumstance, Unfortunately, there are some, I'm getting some cases of children who absolutely have the all of the precursors to being able to work on verbal production of speech, but instead the focus even in this ideal situation, I'm not talking about school yet. So, I have multiple children who have gone to a local reputable hospital here, and the focus and the primary focus only has been on the AAC device. And even though the children had all the precursors to being able to participate in therapy for apraxia, that's direct, using principles of motor learning, they were not even remotely receiving that. So that's my concern, even in an ideal situation, that AAC, huge proponent, but at the same time, if the child has these prerequisites to be able to speak, we need to be knowing what we're doing. We need to stay up on the current research and, relying on the fact that you're an AAC expert and using that as an excuse to not work on apraxia, or using apraxia as an excuse on why we're not working on verbal speech just doesn't work. So we really, again, the AAC experts that I refer my kids to, they conversely refer to me if they have a client that they're seeing all of those, all of those prerequisites to maybe being able to acquire verbal speech using therapy, being in therapy for apraxia, and we see them in tandem. So in an ideal world and in an ideal situation, that is my ideal treatment plan, and it works really great. And it allows me to focus solely on verbal speech while supporting AAC and having the device out. And they conversely can work on their, language goals using AAC, and also supporting verbal speech if they have opportunities and know what the target word list is to carry over targets that they're working on with me. So I really find that way to be the best, and that is what I do. Now, I do think that, in the schools, obviously, that's harder. You have less time with the kids. You have to prioritize your goals, and, which one do you pick? And there are so many factors that go into that. I do think it's possible, though, to still work on both. I had looked up this article before I did this video, and it was an article in 2015 from Uman and McCarthy, and it was outlining something called a dual paradigm approach. And with this approach, this is where a therapist would be doing dual modalities, AAC and verbal apraxia of speech, and treating those together. And, it was taught, it just, had some case studies of a variety of therapists who were doing this and talking about the challenges of doing it. And the main challenge that was of most interest to me, being a therapist that specializes in apraxia, is that, they weren't sure that even though, there was a ton of growth with the children and lots of good progress reported in terms of language, there wasn't really any solid evidence to show that they were doing the best practice for childhood apraxia of speech. And with childhood apraxia of speech, of course, you might know the current recommendations are 3 to 5 times a week of individual therapy using the principles of motor learning. So that's going to be basically impossible in a school to get that best practice in. But I do think there's a way that you can balance it. And I think that, if I, when I was working in the schools and I had that situation where I had a child with AAC and I had a child with, I had a child on AAC with apraxia, what I did is you just have to be very clear going into your session on what your goals are. Otherwise, it can look really disjointed and you're probably not making a lot of progress in either. And so I would work it just like I do in private practice. This session is going to be dedicated to this goal, or maybe this percentage of the session is going to be dedicated to an AAC goal, and this percentage of the session is going to be dedicated to a speech goal. And that doesn't mean I can't support, you do it just like I do in private practice, but with yourself. You would say, that doesn't mean I'm not, let's say I'm working on a verbal speech goal and our focus is really on the verbal production. And I still have the AAC device out to use it if we need a communication breakdown repair or something like that. But really be really focused and know that, but the goal for this percentage of the session or this particular session is on verbal speech, and then conversely do the same if you're working on AAC. The goal of this session is on, whatever goal I have around AAC, and that doesn't mean I can't support verbal speech while we're working on this goal. I can, but this is going to be my focus. And so, it's so much harder in a school, and I have mad respect for school speech therapists. I used to be one, and it's a tough gig. So Anyway, in private practice though, and if you're a parent watching this, I really find the best treatment approach is an expert in apraxia, working on those verbal productions, and an expert in AAC, focusing on the language development. So I like to tell parents a lot too, when their child is pre-verbal, what your child is doing on the communication device is what you can expect language-wise, not speech necessarily, but language-wise, when I'm able to help get their speech motor planning system, when it improves. So anyway, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me, leave me a comment, and I hope you all have a good day.